Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Carol Backos, professor in the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Cultures and the director of the UCLA Center for the Study of Religion. It gives me even greater pleasure than usual to welcome you to today's event. Gosh, it's been well over 2 years since we've convened a group of this size, so it really is exciting. Welcome to all of you. Welcome everyone. It's nice to see a lot of students, some familiar and lots of unfamiliar faces. It's great. Tell you a little about the center. The UCLA Center for the Study of Religion is a multidisciplinary research center that focuses on the historical and contemporary role of religious ideas, practices, and institutions within societies and throughout regions of the world. CSR also houses the undergraduate program in the study of religion, which offers courses on topics from God and the Good, often solely taught by Professor Ryan Gillespie, who's with us here. So topics from God and the Good to religion in LA, the Bible and liberation, to religion, law, and politics. The center promotes the academic study of religion through seminars, lectures, and conferences, as well as films and artistic performances. Our wide-ranging programs and collaborative initiatives reflect the variety of ways in which religion intersects with other fields of inquiry. Today's program is an example of the center's commitment to explore the role of religion in contemplating moral and ethical decision-making. We don't have any flyers on hand. Please venture on our website and check out some of our upcoming events. Some will be in person, others will be on Zoom, but we'd love to see you, whether it's on our screen or, again, in body form. So, a few months ago, I took advantage of my puppy Doobie's late morning nap to get through the Sunday Times book review. As I was flipping through it, and actually it's not easily flippable, I caught sight of the title, How to Be Perfect. Wow, great. Just what I need. Another reminder of how perfectly imperfect I am. So I was about to keep trying to flip when I noticed that the author of How to Be Perfect is a creator of The Good Place. Now, I had heard a great deal of, I heard a lot of amazing things about the show from various sources, including students from the study of religion. I read the review with great relish and decided we must get Michael to campus. So I reached out to my dear colleague, Pamela Hieronymi, who actually served as a consultant and has a cameo on the show. And well, the rest is history, and so here we are today. Full disclosure, I only started to read the book about a week ago and finished last night. Late last night. And I'm only into the 3rd season of The Good Place. My excuse? Well, it's not because I was watching The Bachelor or eating Hawaiian pizza. Can you imagine pineapple on pizza? Not in Brooklyn, and certainly not because I was attending a Red Sox game, God forbid, or engaged in teleological ruminations, or trying to come to terms with my own moral exhaustion. It's because I was too busy pushing my rock up the hill, so to speak. Life happens. Don't worry if you didn't get these references. You will when you read the book. And now that I have read the book, cover to cover, I can say, if you haven't, run, don't walk. I want to thank Mike for throwing light on so many fascinating questions, many that have kept me up at night, late at night. Like, why does it upset me so much when people don't return shopping carts? Or worse, just plop them in the middle of a coveted parking spot at Costco the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Now, who does that? Why does anyone do that? And speaking of Costco, is it morally wrong to take a second free sample when it's only one per customer and say it's for my husband, knowing that it's there's a 99% chance that he won't eat it? A 50% chance that he won't eat it? Hypothetically speaking, of course. Or the one that really gets me going, why don't we pick up after our dogs, even when the dog poo dispenser is literally a few feet away, And while I'm picking up my sweet Doobie's Doo, you know his doo don't stink, should I also pick up someone else's dog doo? And even though it's in the middle of the night and no one is around, should I still pick up Doobie's Doo? I should, right, Mike? Mm-hmm. Ask Mike. He has the answers. And more seriously, I now have a better understanding of why it really bothers me when people aren't sufficiently troubled to speak up against injustices, or when they might speak up too loudly. Thank you, Aristotle. How to Be Perfect is a wonderful, thought-provoking, hilarious read. I've never enjoyed reading long, elaborate footnotes as much as I enjoyed reading Mike's. And by the way, do check out the acknowledgments. So thank you, Mike. Oh, and of course, thank you, Todd May. To the formal introduction, Mike Schur's debut book, How to Be Perfect, the correct answer to every moral question, serves as an accessible and amusing guide to the main schools of ethical thought. Beyond his role as author, Mike Schur is also an Emmy Award-winning television producer, writer, and actor. He has worked on shows like Saturday Night Live, The Office, Master of None, The Comeback, and Hacks, and created or co-created Parks and Recreation, Brooklyn 99, The Good Place, and Rutherford Falls. His conversation partner this afternoon is Pamela Hieronymi, professor of UCLA's Department of Philosophy. Her work explores the intersection of many different subfields: ethics, philosophy of mind, philosophy of action, and the lively discussion of moral responsibility and free will. She recently published Freedom, Resentment, and the Metaphysics of Morals with Princeton University Press, and is currently working on a manuscript, Minds That Matter, which will bring these two strands together to unwind the traditional problem of free will and responsibility. Please join me in welcoming Mike Schur and Pamela Hieronymi to the stage.
We've been informed that these microphones don't work. Yeah. So the question is, do we leave them here because it looks professional, or do we just get rid of them?
I think it looks good.
I think it looks good too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you guys hear me in the back? I'm not, okay, good. So, it's an immense.
Hold on 1 second, let me just angle this.
It's an immense privilege to be here with Mike, and I've brought with me his book, available everywhere. All proceeds go to charity. You can think about whether that's a good reason to buy a book about being perfect while you read it. In the book, Mike gives what he calls a quick start guide to ethics, including Kantianism, contractualism, utilitarianism, and virtue ethics, with a sprinkling of existentialism. And he applies that to real-life issues, as you have already heard, with chapter titles ranging from, do I have to return the shopping cart to the shopping cart rack thingy? It's all the way over there. To, oh, you bought a new iPhone, that's cool. Did you know that millions of people are starving in South Asia? So I would like to ask Mike about the 10th chapter, because there, I think, so in the other chapters, Mike presents to you and digests for you the great thinkers of history on ethics. But in chapter 10, I think you start to do a little of your own philosophy. So I wanted to ask about that, including the relation between failing, which I know is not a favorite topic of college students, okay? Between failing and meaning. So this chapter is titled, This Sandwich is Morally Problematic, but it's also delicious. Can I still eat it? That was Chick-fil-A for those of you. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit of Mike's prose, unless you want to read it.
Up to you.
I will read it because I have it all marked up. So this section says, a fun little moral surprise. Everything we love is terrible. We all have at least a dozen problematic personal affinities. We root for the Kansas City Chiefs, Atlanta Braves, or some other sports team that callously dresses its mascot in an offensive Native American costume. We watch and love entertainment made by Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, or Brett Ratner. We listen to music by Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, R. Kelly, or Placido Domingo. If we don't know of at least one person or thing whose actions make it problematic for us to be their active fan, it's only because we're hermits who haven't looked at the internet in 20 years. Here is our old friend, moral exhaustion. Okay, by the way, moral exhaustion, that's Mike's idea. So Kant has the categorical imperative, existence precedes essence. Mike has moral exhaustion.
To be clear, I claim it's my idea, but it's just because I tried to come up with a term that would get me remembered.
And you put it in caps.
I put it in all caps, and I reference it like 11 times in the book as a way to try to goose it a little bit and get people like Pamela to start using it in her classes so that I can then become. I don't know if I invented it. I really don't. I'm just claiming that I did.
So here's our old friend moral exhaustion with another new fun twist. It's hard enough to figure out what we're supposed to do all the time. Now we have to be responsible for what we like. We've been saddled with this problem for a long time, but only recently did we start to really care about it. An increase in cultural conversation around topics of social justice, more social media shaming, and an emerging awareness that maybe it's not okay to assault women and to use other cultures as Halloween costumes, have meant that people's bad actions are much more likely to be exposed, and thus we're much more likely to be called into account for watching, listening to, and rooting for them. But here's the problem. It's not just that so many of the people we love who have made great art or sung great music or hit key home runs are morally problematic. It's that they're the people we love. They're the people whose art and accomplishments helped to form our identities, bond with our parents and friends, define our childhoods. We love them. Some of us can't even swear off a chicken sandwich after a provincial goober burps up some homophobia on a radio show. So what happens when we hear that our all-time favorite singer or actor or sports hero has done something awful? We are emotionally interwoven with parts of the culture that shaped our identity. So just detaching ourselves from them is painful. It's not like removing a splinter. It's more like amputating a limb. And he goes through just makes some nice distinctions, does some nice philosophy.
I feel like you're grading my paper.
A+. Okay. The most important part of becoming better people, I'll say yet again, is that we care about whether what we do is good or bad, and therefore try to do the right thing. If we love a problematic person or thing too much to part with it altogether, I think that means we have to keep two ideas in our head at the same time. And now he's numbered them and set them out just like you do. 1, I love this thing. 2, the person who made it is troubling. Forgetting about 1 means we lose a piece of ourselves. Forgetting about 2 means we are denying that this thing causes us and others anguish, and so we're failing to show concern for the victims of this awful behavior. But what does this mean practically speaking? How do we actually confront this problem day to day, person by person? Is it always enough simply to keep two conflicting ideas in our head at the same time? How do we know when someone had crossed over from troubling to indefensible? This part of the question doesn't have an answer, I think. It's a bold thing, right? We can and should apply any of our moral theories to all of these situations, but at some point we'll just have to act, to choose. We will decide to have to banish this thing or this person from our lives, but maybe not that one, based on nothing more than our reasoning and our guts. People who want to avoid this thorny issue will like to say, where do you draw the line? As if merely pointing out its blurriness absolves us from trying to bring it into focus. But as comedian John Oliver likes to say, somewhere, we draw it somewhere. You and I may draw it in different places, but we need to draw it, each of us, for ourselves. Now, the instant we draw these lines, we guarantee that we'll eventually find ourselves in a contradiction. We'll continue to love and support one person and not another, even when the two of them seem roughly equivalent. Our friends will jump up and down and point gleefully at and ask how we can possibly watch this movie and not that one, or how we can cheer for this baseball player but condemn that one, and so on. Those contradictions are not excuses to throw our hands up and abandon the entire project of outlining our integrity. They're reasons to dig back in, mull everything over, and if necessary, erase the line we drew and redraw it somewhere else. Contradictions within our own system of integrity are simply opportunities to try, again, to make decisions true to our beliefs, our understanding of ethics, and our sense of who we are. These moments are when we see the true value in failure. We're deciding to do something that will someday backfire. The more we chew on it and work it through, the more meaning we can derive from the backfire when it happens. All right. I want to ask you about that last part. How is it that failing is a way to derive meaning?
Okay, so in The Good Place, which Carol has only apparently watched 3/4 of, the big question that I had in creating the show, and thus the big question in the book, was if you start from a position of we're all flawed, we all make mistakes, we all fail, then the project of attempting perfection, and this is why the book is called what it is pointless, because it's unachievable, and there are philosophers like Susan Wolf who point out that it's not even a good idea to try to attempt it because it sort of destroys your life. If you make everything about morality, then you don't learn how to cook and play tennis and do the things that make life rich and interesting. So if you can't actually attempt perfection, then the question becomes, what do you make of the failures? And the argument that the show makes and that the book attempts to make is that given that we're all going to fail all the time, we then have a question of like, well, what do you do with the failure? And one thing you can do is be really upset at yourself and hide in your house and sulk and wait until the storm cloud passes and then just move on with your life. And another thing you can do is take the failures as opportunities to examine them, to figure out why the failure occurred. Was it a failure on your part? Did you know it was wrong and fail to follow the code or plan that was guiding you? Was it a failure of happenstance or random wind? And for the number of failures that we have that are like sort of known failures, I guess, or things that were the result of, like, I knew what I was doing and I made the wrong choice, then it can be easy to derive meaning from them, because you say, well, now the meaning of this failure was to point out to me that the next time I'm in a similar situation, I should make a different choice. Some of them are unknown failures, which is you didn't know that this was wrong, and then it went terribly wrong. And now you can examine the whole thing and go back and say, like, okay, let's retrace our steps here. Where did I go wrong and why did I go wrong? Which is where philosophy, I think, comes into play, because if you go back and examine various philosophical theories of ethics, then you might say, oh, I see what I did here. I took a Kantian approach and should have taken a utilitarian approach or whatever. So it's basically like our lives are pockmarked by failure every day, and then it's sort of up to us to determine whether we want to just ignore that and keep sailing along, or decide those failures are opportunities to try to make better choices and correct our behavior going forward. So that was the point of the show. The show is all about people who were deeply flawed, have these enormous, call them Achilles heels or something. The character Eleanor is very selfish. The character Tahani did a lot of things only for external gratification. Jason Mendoza was just an idiot in Jacksonville who had no impulse control and was a moron. And Chidi was so concerned, he was attempting Susan Wolf's moral sainthood, and as a result was so annoying that no one ever wanted to hang out with him. And so he was taking those 4 people and saying, like, well, now we're showing you all of the ways in which you made difficult, bad, or worse kinds of choices and caused harm or pain or suffering to other people. Now what do you do about it? Do you just stay the way you were, or do you try to learn from those mistakes? I mean, I'm not saying anything revolutionary here, right? It's literally like you break a vase in your house and your mom says don't play baseball in the house anymore. It's not that different from just like take the bad thing that happened as a lesson and as a guide for your behavior going forward. That's really all it is.
Well, it's a little more than that, right? Because the idea here is that we don't know where the line is, and we have to draw it somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's where this chapter in particular gets kind of tricky, right? Because I think this is the most commonly faced problem. It's the problem that the most people face the most often right now, I think, because we now are aware of every single thing that everyone on Earth is doing at all times. So, like there was a story a couple months ago, or like a month ago, of a guy, like an investment banker in Connecticut somewhere, who went into like a donut shop. I don't know if everyone remembers this. And he just lost his mind, and he just started, or it was a smoothie place, and he just started screaming at the like 17-year-old who was making his smoothie, and he used a bunch of very unpleasant words, and someone in the back was recording the whole thing. And then so I, on the other side of the country, I woke up in the morning and I learned this guy's name, where he lives, where he works, what his voice sounds like. I was aware the minute he was fired by the investment company he worked for. I followed his apology. Like, I don't know this guy. He's an investment banker in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I know his entire life story. And so because we're so aware of all of these things that people are doing, we are confronted with our own set of likes and dislikes and beliefs in terms of the teams we root for and the music we listen to. And we are then, because we know everything about them, we are then forced to kind of morally reckon with their behavior all the time. We didn't ask for this. Like, this wasn't the deal when I was a kid, when you were a kid. I didn't know anything about Eric Clapton, except that when Eric Clapton was 16, he was so good at playing the guitar that teenagers in England wrote Clapton as God with spray paint all over the walls of buildings in like Birmingham, England. And as far as I was concerned, he was God. He was incredible. I listened to all of his music all the time. I saw him in concert in Hartford, Connecticut in 1991. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. And then you grow up and you read about like a crazy racially charged rant that he went on in the 70s that I wasn't aware of at the time because no one had the internet. And then he's like makes a really bad anti-vax song when the vaccine comes out. Like the meaning of the song is bad, but also the song just sucks. It's a very bad song. And so now I have 17 Eric Clapton albums on CD because I'm old on my shelf at home, and now I have to decide what I do about that. Do I throw them away? Do I cover them with a blanket so that no one sees them when they come into my house? Do I pretend that I don't love the Layla sessions? I can't. I love the Layla sessions. I've listened to them my whole life. And so like this is a bargain we didn't ask for, that we have been forced into. And I think that, and this is what I'm trying to say here, is that like, it sucks. We didn't ask to be in this position. We are. And I think the only real mistake you can make is either pretending that we are not in this bargain, that we're not a part of this equation, or saying like, well, there's no point because everybody sucks and everybody's terrible, and so I'm not going to draw lines of distinction between better and worse kinds of actions because there's no point because everyone's flawed. Like, those are the only real mistakes I think you could make, and where that leaves you is being in a position where you have to judge person by person, event by event, which is morally exhausting, right? And that's why the project of just being alive on Earth feels so tiring right now, is because we have been shoved into this world where we are aware of what everyone is doing on a day-by-day basis, and it's hard. And I think the only real mistake you can make is not drawing those lines. I think it is a mistake to not try, and as soon as you try, you're going to fail, because someone will say, how can you support Eric Clapton and not Van Morrison, who also made a terrible anti-vax song, both terrible in its message and also the song sucks. And so someone's going to say, how can you support Eric Clapton and not Van Morrison? And then it's up to you to figure out whether that's true, or whether you're throwing both of them away, or whether you're keeping them both. And it's just a kind of ongoing, endless process that we'll never escape from.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Carol. Don't get so exhausted you can't finish the show, though.
So you could not draw the line. I mean, so you could throw everything away. You could not draw the line because you think everybody's terrible and it doesn't matter.
Right.
But so in the chapter, you also talk about love, and you talk about Aunt Connie.
Oh, I made up an aunt, a racist aunt, who talks to you about
Aunt Connie.
Mexicans. Yeah.
Here she is.
Yeah.
Right. So and especially if you're thinking about love and people, that brings you to a question about how much we will embrace and identify with what in some religious traditions would call sin. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that we have more information available to us. The fact that we now know all of the sins of all of these people presents us a problem only because we also think that there's something bad about our associating with them, or being next to them, or loving them.
Mm-hmm.
A different kind of refusal to draw the line would evoke something like grace, or something like we have to accept everyone, not because it just doesn't matter, but because that's what love demands of us. So I'm wondering why is it important to draw the line?
Well, right. There's a difference between random investment banker in Greenwich, who you learn about instantly as doing a bad thing. You don't know if he's a bad person, you don't know anything about him, but you know he did this bad thing and he was fired, and so you learn about him. There's a difference between that and your Aunt Connie, who sends you birthday cards and is generally very nice, but maybe watches certain news programs that warn her about enormous caravans of migrants that are storming their way up from Central America, and loudly talks about this to you every day when you know in your head that it's not accurate. And those are so that you love Aunt Connie in this scenario. You don't care about the guy in Greenwich, but you love Aunt Connie. And then the question becomes, well, now where do you draw the line with her? Because for two reasons, I think. One of them is just like thinking of it as a black and white situation of like a person who says these things can't be a part of my life means what? You never talk to Aunt Connie again, and you maybe never talk to your mom, her sister, because your mom is furious at you for driving Aunt Connie out of your life, and you can't attend family events, and Aunt Connie's never going to meet your kids. That doesn't feel right. And also, the thought of even confronting Aunt Connie is terrifying, because the thought of confronting people that you know really well, and you think of as people you love, and you think of as people who love you, what's the reality of that, right? How does that actually play out? What does this do to Thanksgiving, is the question, right? If you stand up when Aunt Connie is talking about caravans of migrants, standing up and saying like, your information is wrong and the things you're saying are racist, that's the end of Thanksgiving, and that also doesn't feel right. And so doing what you would consider in the abstract to do like the right thing, the reality of it, the rubber meeting the road part of it becomes impossible to navigate. And so the question, the way I ended up sort of resolving this in my head was that Aristotle literally says a person with no sense of shame is said to have no sense of disgrace. And if you're trying, in theory, to flourish the way Aristotle wants you to flourish, then it maybe feels incumbent upon you to help other people flourish in the same way, people that you love and admire and respect, generally speaking, who are close to you. And so that would seem to me to say, like, well, maybe you don't stand up at Thanksgiving and tell Aunt Connie she's an inveterate racist. But at some point, maybe you do try to approach her in the way that like makes all of us start like sweating and feeling nervous and sad and awkward, because you want Aunt Connie to flourish too. You want her to have a flourishing, verdant life. And if we turn away from those moments and those people, then that's not love to me. Like, the actual act of love is trying, I think, to help them flourish, and if they have no shame or sense of disgrace, then they're not going to achieve that. And so I think that when we talk about like loving people, the part, you think of it only in terms of how you can positively interact with them. You can call them on their birthday and you can hug them when they're sad. You don't think of the way that you might need to have a negatively charged interaction with them if they're doing something that you, in your mind, needs a little bit of corrective behavior. And it's very scary. And it's also, you're also setting yourself up as a sort of arbiter of what is appropriate behavior and what isn't. And sometimes it's not as clear as just spouting Fox News talking points at Thanksgiving. Sometimes it's a much dicier and less obvious wrong that you think needs correcting. That's where it just gets really tough. And I say this as a person who has close friends and relatives who have espoused those sorts of talking points in key moments, and I have done nothing because it's really awkward. It's really scary, and the thought of confrontation is nerve-wracking, and I'm a pretty conflict-averse person. And so I fail at this all the time, and I now have come to see like that they have a problem, which is a belief that is, I believe, racist or something, and I also have a problem. And that problem is that I'm not doing anything about it, and if I love that person and that person means something to me, I kind of think my problem matters not as much. Like, I'm not doing active damage to the universe with my problem, but I am doing active damage to that person by not expressing love that way, and I'm doing active damage to our relationship, because what happens is an event like that occurs, my wife and I drive home, and then we just talk shit about the person behind their back. That's not good for the friendship or the familial relationship. Like, that can't be the answer. And so the only thing you have left when you run through all of that stuff is you draw a line somewhere, you approach it the best you can, you try to navigate that spider web, and you see what happens.
Awesome. It's very existentialist.
It is. That's Todd May's influence.
No, I also want to be pro-existentialist for the moment. So I'm going to switch gears for a second. So here's the thing we want to know. We want to know, what did you study in college? How does it inform your work as a creator of culture? And haven't you proved to everyone that the humanities matters?
Oh, yeah. No pressure. I studied English and American literature in college. I took 2 philosophy classes. I took a pre-Socratic Greek philosophy class, which ruled. It was super fun. And I took a class by Stanley Cavell, mostly because Cavell's classes, he wrote about, if anyone's familiar with him, he wrote about philosophy and then also movies, and you got to watch cool movies in his class. And I was a freshman, and I was like, well, this sounds good. I'll watch Bringing Up Baby and read Kant. And that's what we did, and it was great. But I drifted away from philosophy, much to my later detriment, because I had to learn all this stuff at the age of 40 instead of 18. And the advice that I give to every college-age student I meet is to take classes in the least practical things you can possibly take classes in. I took classes, while I was in college, I took classes in Norse mythology. I took classes in like urban planning, but not like because I wanted to be an urban planner, just because I wanted to learn. I read The Power Broker by Robert Moses and wanted to learn how cities were made. I took art history. I took an Islamic art history class, which was great. I feel like the point of college, in my mind, is to be the opposite of practical. This is the last 4 years in your life where you have no responsibilities, none, except to be a sponge and to soak up information that makes your life rich and interesting. And it always bummed me out when I met people who were like, I'm an econ major, I'm taking government classes. Like that, they just were so like intense about it. And I was like, well then what are you doing? Like why, this is also supposed to be fun at some level. And those people are never having fun. Never fun, not a single moment of their lives were they having fun. And then when they would finish their like econ and government classes, they would go out and they'd be really drunk, and they'd pass out, and they would wake up and then be hungover, and they'd start studying again. I was like, what is this? What are you doing, man? Like, just relax and enjoy yourself. So I not only think that humanities matter, I kind of think the whole thing should be humanities. I think it should be against the law to be pre-med. If you enroll in like a really hard biochem class as a freshman, you should be sent to prison for a year and you should think about your choices.
So I think we wanted to go to questions, right?
Yeah, so please, any questions?
Who here is pre-med? No one?
All potential study of religion majors. Yes.
I have one. So I'm a UCLA alum, currently a high school teacher in the middle of like a mass teacher exodus. And so I think purpose is very much on a lot of teachers' minds because we're teachers in like an inner city neighborhood, and a lot of kids don't see themselves going to college. And a lot of teachers are also like, is it bad that I'm leaving when I'm so burned out? And so I see like a massive overlap with your moral exhaustion point. And so I wonder if what might be your thoughts on that phenomenon with like the mass teacher exodus, and B, as a creator, what would you say to like, I want to be able to go to my students tomorrow and be like, I talked to Mike Schur. And B, if you have like anything that you'd like to say to like just today's kids.
Man, the teachers and nurses, right? In the last 2.5 years, I watched my kids take online school, and I watched the patience that teachers had to exhibit, and it was exhausting to listen to it as a grown-up, and I can only imagine how odd it was for the kids and then how exhausting it was for the teachers. My grandmother was a teacher. She was a math teacher in Houston for like 30 plus years, and it was just her life's work. It was the thing that she loved doing more than anything. It was also really hard. She had the patience of Job, and she eventually worked in HISD, the Independent School District, which is, I think, the only one larger than LAUSD, and designed math curriculums and stuff by the time she was done. And she came home every day at 5 p.m. and took her shoes off, put her feet on the coffee table, and fell asleep for like 3 hours. And I thought it was because she was old, but it wasn't. It's because her job was exhausting. And I think that I'm guessing that you become a teacher, I'm basing this on her. You become a teacher because it's your passion, it's what you love, you find meaning in it, you derive meaning from it. The bright spots in your days, weeks, months, or years are worth the not bright spots, right? And I fear that the thing that has happened is that the bright spots kind of faded over the pandemic, and I don't know how emotionally to cope with that. I think if anyone feels like they're at the end of the rope, then their own emotional health is important and should be paid attention to. It's sad and it's scary from the outside to see nurses and teachers and people who have jobs like that leaving their professions, but also, I get it. I don't know. I don't think that you can do a good job as a teacher or a nurse if you are officially burnt out. If you've burned that candle at both ends and there's no wax anymore. So I don't think it's a thing that requires any explanation, frankly. I don't think you need to justify your decision to anyone. The only question is like, I mean, the question of how we continue as a country or as a city or a state, that's not up to an individual teacher to figure out. That's up to government and the public to figure out how to replace people or how to make their lives a little bit easier. Money is the answer. That's right. He just did that. He literally did that. So, as far as like what to say to kids, I mean, this is way above my pay grade, but there are a lot of examples that my grandmother used to tell me about kids, because in HISD, same situation, most kids didn't see themselves, didn't picture themselves, couldn't envision themselves academically. And she used to always say, she used to have a lot of kids come back who had gone to college and talk to the kids and stuff like that, stuff that I'm sure every school district does, but I don't know. I sure don't know the answer in terms of how to like increase kids' self-esteem or self-image to the point where they imagine that the world can be open to them. I mean, frankly, so I'm 46, and when I started as a professional writer, I was 22, and I used to look at the 46-year-olds and laugh at how old and boring they were, and now I'm the old and boring one. And the 22-year-olds that I work with now have a very discomforting view of the world. None of them want to have kids. Very few of them want to get married. And they have a deep-seated, I would say, disgust for and distrust of everybody my age or older, because they are looking around at the world and they're seeing enormous calcified systemic problems that our generation did nothing to change. And I can't blame them. I don't know what to say. Like, you can say like, hey, I'm one of the good ones because I support what, eco charities. Like, is that enough? Probably not. Like, they're at the end of their ropes. The young professional set is at the absolute end of their ropes in terms of trusting anyone older than them. And so when you're talking now about kids even younger than that, I can only imagine what they think of grown-ups. Like, I don't like grown-ups that much, and I don't think grown-ups have done a good job. So how could their inheriting will be long gone, and they will be continuing to try to deal with the problems that we created. So this is a huge, enormous problem you're talking about. I mean, some of it is this, but some of it is just trying maybe on a one-to-one basis to make the kids who are on the fence see that there's a path through optimism and hope that is worth at least exploring and not giving up quite yet.
Would you like me to?
You got to choose. I'm not
I can't
choosing.
choose. I'm a little chitty here. Yes, over there. Yes, you. Unless you want me to choose someone else.
No,
It's
no,
you.
you're
Go
good.
for it.
Well, first off, Mike, I just wanted to commend you for calling out that the busy econ stereotype, because he's literally my roommate.
Yeah. Wait, what's his name? First name only. What's his name?
First name? Krish, but it's for CS though, instead of business.
Yeah, but he's going to Silicon Valley, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, same destination, I guess. But I wanted to ask for, I guess, more like creative career type advice, because me and my friend here were part of the School of Film and Television, just across the, over there, But I was really interested in what you were saying about how you picked up on all these very, what was the term you used, like non-useful subjects, or what was the?
Impractical, maybe?
Impractical subjects, there we go. And that served as a really good part of inspiration for your work. And I've taken a couple of philosophy classes, actually with Professor as well, from winter quarter of 2021, I think. But my question is, should we change our majors?
Wait, what's your major now?
So I'm film and TV production.
Well, what do you want to do with your life?
Great question.
Well, look, I majored in English because I didn't want to do anything but read books, and taking English classes let me read books. And then I filled out everything else I did with just whatever I caught my eye and I thought was interesting. And I think if you, at Harvard at the time, half of your classes had to be in your major and half had to not be in your major. And so at the end of the day, half of the stuff I took had nothing to do with reading books, in English, right? It was all that other stuff. And so I think, I don't know if you need to change your major, but I think if you diversify the range of classes you take, by the end of your career here, you will have at least dipped your toe into a bunch of different little ponds, and you'll know whether you want to try to go into film and TV, or whether you suddenly catch fire at a computer science. Well, that's not going to happen. Persian art or something like that. Like to me, that's the key. The key isn't necessarily to focus on what your major is. I think the key is to take, this is a buffet, like take one of everything at the buffet, and then you will have a better chance of stumbling into, potentially, an entirely unexpected and different course of study. My dad's roommate, this is a hilarious story. Well, I think it's hilarious, you can be the judge. My dad's college roommate was, he was a physics major, and his dad was a physicist, his dad was a physicist, and his dad was he was from Iowa, and he was like, you were gonna go to college and study physics. And he did, and when he was a senior, he was taking his 73rd physics class, and suddenly he was like, hang on a second, I hate physics. And so he was like, this weight lifted off his shoulders, and he was like, I'm free, I'm not gonna go into physics, I'm gonna do something else with my life. And the thing he did with his life was he became a lawyer. And he became a partner at Cravath, Swaine & Moore, like the biggest law firm in the country, and he became filthy rich. But for him, law was like the rebellious, wild man thing to go do, because he came from this endless line of physicists. So it's not that there is an answer to the question of what you should do or how you should do this. But I think if he hadn't taken classes or done whatever he did to make him second guess his first option, he wouldn't have lived in an enormous house in Rye, New York, and had lived he's the happiest lawyer I've ever met. So happy, this guy, because he wasn't. Yeah, but he wasn't a physicist, and that's what he thought he was going to be. So if you just treat it like a buffet, man, that's my advice. Just take the buffet approach to this.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so on this side to the back, all the way to the back. Yes, you. Yes.
Hello. I'm going to open this up with some relationship advice questions.
Great. That's my specialty.
Yes, of course. So I have a boyfriend who is younger than me, and he is interested in going to the military and then carrying on into some law enforcement work. And I, being a college student with the natural suspicion of state entities, look at that direction, and he has a deep passion for it. He has a sense of patriotism that is wild to me, because I did not grow up in a family with a lot of military service, and he did. And I'm trying to navigate that and being as supportive as possible, while also having that moral exhaustion of but America has committed crimes and war is bad. Why would you ever want to be involved in that? So I guess I'm kind of asking how to navigate with this state while also being supportive of someone that I care about, who also cares about the state.
But you get when you write a book called How to Be
Okay, well, the phrase America has committed crimes is accurate, and also I think probably unhelpful for most individual one-on-one interactions involving friendships or romance. Because if the beginning of a discussion is America has done crime, then it just blots out the sun, right? There's no then it's do you want to go to Jamba Juice? Well, let's start from this point. America is guilty of systemic racism. You'll never get anywhere, right? So I think that are you a current student here?
Yes, I'm in my senior year.
Okay, congratulations. Senior April, man, that is the greatest feeling in the world. God damn it. I would say that at this moment in your life, not knowing you or your younger boyfriend, and by the way, nice poll. I would say that the thing that matters now is is he a good person and does he treat you well? Are you a good person and do you treat him well? Do you mutually respect each other, find each other interesting, perhaps funny? Is the time that you spend together rich and lively and interesting? Because just like my dad's roommate in physics, at any moment, he might say like, wait a second, I have this all wrong. I really want to be a circus clown. And there's no problem with circuses, right? Circuses have, or maybe there is a lot of problems. But the point is you don't know. The future is a very wide open and very blank canvas at this point. And so at your age as a current college student, and he is a current college student, I would say that there are other much more important issues than like, can I be with a person given America's long and sordid history of systemic racism and violent military action, because that comes later. Save that for years down the road. If this relationship continues and then he actually goes into the military or becomes a FBI agent or whatever, then at some point you have to have some difficult, tricky conversations with him. But right now, I mean, it's April 21st, you're a senior in college, like, chill out a little. That would be my extraordinarily inexpert relationship advice.
Okay, lots of questions. Yes, sir.
Well, first, America has committed war crimes. Yeah.
Given that.
Yeah.
And given that, what's Ted Danson like? That was your question.
So, do you take yourself as seeing, like, I don't know, the Twitter moralists who are like, you need to cancel such and such, you need to cancel such and such, as being, like, roughly speaking, right? That is to say, like, we should, like, they say Eric Clapton did such and such, and so they say, generally speaking, if we have all these histories, that we should stop listening, stop enjoying these various things. Or so do you see that as being roughly correct, and that we have to like pick and choose like what we are, how we're going to operate in the future in order to balance that out, or do you see that as being wrong and you offering kind of an alternative picture?
Okay, so the reactions that people have in America in the early part of the 21st century that have been generally and very boringly and inaccurately called cancel culture is what we're talking about, right? And the name is stupid. It is not. Louis C.K. just won a Grammy. Like, no one's gotten canceled, right? It's not. In very rare cases, Harvey Weinstein, Les Moonves, people like that. These people have been driven away from polite society. They're still fabulously wealthy, and they have no problems, really, except they can't attend dinner. Alan Dershowitz can't attend dinner parties on Martha's Vineyard, Crimea River. Like, that's not being canceled. So the thing that's happened, in my view, is that it's more of like a consequence culture situation where a bunch of people who did a bunch of terrible things without any repercussions and without anyone really knowing about them are now having people find out about them, and people are raising their hand and saying, I don't really like that you're doing that. And they're suffering consequences for it, professional or otherwise. So it's not, to me, a question of whether it is right to be reactive on Twitter. To me, it's a question of whether it's effective. And because what we want, ultimately, is both to have these people pay consequences for their actions and also to correct their behavior going forward, or to have other people who might be inclined to exhibit similar behavior to not exhibit that behavior. And I think the problem with Twitter, an app, a terrible app, an infernal, diabolical app that by its definition, like the starting point of Twitter was like, can we invent something that eliminates nuance? Like, that's how they began to invent it, right? Can we drive nuance away forever? And so what's happening is that people in a very short amount of space have to be as quickly and decisively and aggressively definitive as they can possibly be. And what's happening, I think, is like we're just in the period now where the rubber is meeting the road, where these people are being dragged out into the spotlight for the first time ever, and everyone's jumping in, and it's not good. it's not helpful or useful. And so I hope that we're still in this, the gears are just grinding so coarsely right now. And I hope that both that the behavior changes from the people who are exhibiting the bad behavior, but also that everyone else gets better at discussing it, because we're terrible at discussing it. We're so bad at it. And I'm certainly guilty of it myself. If any of you follow me on Twitter, which I don't recommend, I get very upset, and it's like Twitter is just a steam vent. It's just, you blow off steam like once an hour, like Old Faithful. And that is not, Old Faithful is not an intelligent debater of American culture, right? It's just an explosion. So I think that I don't think it's right or wrong, I just think it's not helpful or good, and that there needs to be mechanisms that someone puts into place that help us just get better at dissecting and being calm and reading the stuff that we need to read and discussing it more intelligently, because it's just this wild pendulum that just swings back and forth and just knocks everything over, and I don't think it's making anything better.
Yes, please.
I was curious, your example about Aunt Connie, and I'm wondering if in some context you think that moral exhaustion might be a luxury that we can't afford, in the sense that are there certain things where you can't really have balance? I think about things, for example, like assaults on reproductive rights, police brutality against certain segments of the society that often result in failed exchanges, etc. And I'm imagining that hypothetical conversation with Aunt Connie, where people have concerns about offending people. And I also picked up on a very valid point you made, that in a one-on-one exchange, not going to be very productive if you come at people and assault their value system. But if you play that out around Thanksgiving tables in the United States over the last 80 years, it's why we relitigate issues like racism in this society, homelessness, the fact that we don't have equal rights amendment, so forth and so on, because we don't press up against people's discomfort and say, I'm sorry, we can't balance or navigate this. To put it in a Kantian term, this is an imperative. We need to do better because we know better. And in that dynamic, I'm wondering how would that play in that Aunt Connie exchange?
Well, I guess it depends a little bit on what Aunt Connie is saying, right? Because in my hypothetical, Aunt Connie is spouting talking points that were poured into her ear poisonously by an enormous for-profit media machine that has a vested interest, an economic interest in making Aunt Connie a racist, right? So part of your calculation when you have to talk to her is like, what do I actually know about her? What are my memories of her? What of her behavior have I seen exhibited that might give me the hope that she isn't at heart this person, but has been warped and twisted and perverted into this person? And then that calculation in terms of how to talk to her takes on this different dimension, as opposed to a person that you might meet who obviously maybe you have less context for, but who does something that just immediately blows past a personal red line, right? Like if you meet a person at a cocktail party and the first thing that person says is the same thing that Aunt Connie said around the dinner table, you're not going to talk to that person very much longer, right? You're just going to be like, well, that person is an asshole, and I no longer wish to continue talking to that person. And the tricky thing comes when we're talking about incrementally making the world a slightly better place, and that only comes about by what you're talking about, right? Which is like taking a deep breath and like whether it's Aunt Connie or the person at the cocktail party saying like, I guess it's on me to push back against this person and what this person is saying, and that's really dicey, especially when you don't. It's dicey when you know the person because there's so much history and it's family and it's confusing, and it's dicier when you don't know the person because you don't know if the person's gonna punch you in the face if you say, hey man, that's racist. So there's like, these are, I think you're right. I generally I agree with you. I don't think we can afford moral exhaustion. I think we have to fight back against moral exhaustion as best we can, because it sure feels like, and I would generally carbon date this to around November of 2016, that we've been sliding in the wrong direction now for a number of years on a number of issues. Like there are a number of things that I think we all thought a few years ago, back in whatever it was, 2011, that marriage equality was a settled issue. it went away. The Republican Party stopped talking about it. It was removed from their platform. It was a matter of settled law. A Republican-appointed Supreme Court justice wrote the majority opinion. It was over. And now, suddenly, in the last 6 months, well, here it comes again. And there's all these rumors that maybe they're gonna start picking this up again because they are emboldened, and that wing of that party feels like, wait a second, we can make some gains here. We have a 6-3 court. That's insane. Like we are, generally speaking, this country has not rolled back rights. Like generally speaking, it takes us too long to give them, but generally speaking, when they've been given, they have not been rolled back, and now we're in a rollback period. And as a proud member of many labor unions, the scariest thing that happens in a negotiation isn't when you make your asks and management makes their offer, but when the offer that they make is below what you were already had. When they try to roll you back, that's when you get scared, because it's like they are so secure in their position that they think they can actually give you less than they did before. And when you're talking about not money or parental leave or anything like that, but basic human rights, that's a very, very scary thing to me. And so those are the stories that make me feel like, yeah, no, we can't, sorry everyone who's morally exhausted, we can't afford the luxury, as you say, of not dealing with this, because the second you take your eye off the ball, you give them an inch and they will take that inch and push you back. And that is unacceptable. That's not, like, whatever else this country is guilty of, war crimes and all sorts of systemic problems, the one thing you can say about us, I think, is that once rights have been given, they have not been taken away, and now they're in the business of taking them away, and that can't happen. So I think you're right. Yeah, I think, like, sorry, Aunt Connie, this is going to get real unpleasant next Thanksgiving. I mean, I think that's kind of the only way to do it.
Lots of questions, great. I'll take the 3 in this row. Why don't the 3 of you ask
at
the
the same
questions?
time? Over each other.
1, 2,
Yeah,
3.
all in a row.
No, go ahead, yeah.
First, thank you so much for being here. Such a pleasure. I'm wondering if you would categorize philosophy in the practical major or impractical major. And just to warn you, I'm getting my PhD in philosophy, so I'm looking for a specific answer.
What are you studying?
Right now I'm doing a project on pregnancy, but in the past I've done a lot of bioethics. I've taken many of Pamela's seminars and lectures.
How was she as a student?
Awesome.
So the question is philosophy practical or impractical?
You wanted me to say stuff so you could think about it.
No, I have an answer. I would say it's practical, because I think that the concept of practicality, when you say the word practical, and when I used it earlier, you're thinking of, like, what's your job, how much money do you make, where do you live, how big is your house and your car? And I think of practicality in the sense you're asking in a different way, which is to say, I firmly believe that the main problem in the American education system is that we have removed civics and ethics from curriculums. Curricula. My kids are probably, kids always have, every kid has the same complaint, which is like, why do I have to study math? I'm never going to use it. Why do I have to study biology? I'm never going to use it. Their parents don't have good answers for those questions because there are none. The kids are totally right. They probably shouldn't take biology or chemistry because they are probably never going to use it, but they are certainly going to need civics, and they are certainly going to need ethics. And if it were up to me, if I could snap my fingers and design the educational curriculum K-12 and beyond, I would institute civics and ethics from kindergarten. Because first of all, as I learned over the pandemic, kids can handle it. Like, kids are smart, and they get what ethics are, and they get what civics are. And the part of the problem with the Aunt Connies of the world is that they're a little bit unaware of what it means to be a citizen, I think, and the responsibilities of being a citizen. And I think if you could replace some of the more intense and specified classes that are taught as a matter of course in America with civics and ethics, everything gets a lot easier. Voting, right? No one would, if everyone were aware of ethics and civics, no one would be trying to take voting rights away from everybody, because that would be insane, because we would have all taken classes in why it's important. So when you're talking about whether philosophy is practical or not, I think for that reason it's incredibly practical. Whether it's moral philosophy or not, philosophy, which I came to very late in my life, is a thing I find myself using every day, and there's nothing more practical than something that you use every day. So for your life, it's not maybe for your job, fair enough, but maybe for your life, in terms of practical for your life, I don't think there's anything more practical than philosophy.
Yes, please.
How much understanding should you give someone with ignorance? And I mean that in terms of like, say you can afford, you know, the best organic almond milk, and then you see someone get like the cheapest cow's milk, and like, can you kind of excuse that behavior and chalk it up to privilege that you have to be able to afford that, or like the privilege to even know about that kind of industry? Just how much understanding should you give, and like where should you draw the line for that kind of stuff?
So the question, if you didn't hear it, was how much understanding or perhaps grace should you give to someone whom you deem in some matter, great or small, as ignorant? The example being, you are buying expensive almond milk and another person is buying cheap cow's milk, and you, in your mind, have a moral judgment about the difference between drinking animal milk or plant milk, right? I think the answer is that you should give them a lot when it's something like almond milk or cow's milk. Because although it is very funny to imagine you in particular just screaming at you fool, you ignorant fool. I think the answer is a lot, because even in that example, and like in The Good Place, the character Chidi believed that the reason he was in hell was because he drank almond milk even though he knew how much water it took to grow almonds. Like that's the thing that he locked into, is like, this must be where I went wrong. But the truth is that it does take a lot of water to grow almonds, and we are in a drought, and the moral value of almond milk might be higher than the moral value of cow's milk, because no animals were held captive or force-fed hormones or anything in order to make it. But it also used a lot of water in a drought-ridden state, and so you start to wonder exactly what the hedons and dolars calculation is, utilitarianly speaking. That's a word, don't check it. So, and also, I think that there is, you're a student here. You're at one of the greatest universities on God's green earth, and you're at a philosophy event in Royce Hall.
Study of religion.
Study of religion, and you are a smart person who has an active and verdant mind, and you read tons of stuff about how cows are treated, whether they're humanely or not humanely treated, and the difference between a grass-fed cow and a corn-fed cow. And most people on Earth don't have any of that ability, right? Most people on Earth have a bank account with $85 in it, and they have to get to the grocery store very quickly and get groceries to get home because their kid's coming home and they can't afford a nanny, and they have to get their kid some cereal and give their kid cereal and get their kid to do his homework and go to school the next day. And so things like making moral judgments about what kind of milk you're going to buy puts you in the top millionth of 1% of all human beings on Earth in terms of the ability that you have to exist and live in a world that's safe and comfortable. So I think that the answer is a lot. You have to give a lot of, the people that you don't need to be tolerant of are the people that you know for a fact know better and do things bad anyway. You don't need to have that feeling about Elon Musk. You know, like you can say anything you want about Elon Musk. And again, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I have. I was recently in a room with him, like very close to me, like as close as you and I are. And I had this brief fleeting moment of like, if he, I tweet under a pen name, nom de plume. And so I was like, if there's a tiny chance that someone points to me and says the name of my Twitter handle, and then there's a tinier chance that he's aware of it. But if that occurs, there will be a red laser dot on my forehead and I will be murdered. But I feel like with people like him, he knows better. You know that he has the ability and the time and the money, certainly, to research things, like what kind of milk is the best milk to buy. And if you see Elon Musk at Ralph's, and he's buying crappy cow's milk, you have my permission to tell him that he's making a bad decision. I would and record it so I can watch it.
Okay, so you and then Professor Gillespie. Go ahead.
I don't have to follow him. Okay. So in reference to moral exhaustion, how does it kind of factor into, do you think that, you mentioned Twitter and social media and how much that affects people's moral compasses, and I feel like that's part of the exhaustion, is people not knowing what to believe because they are being fed so much stuff, whether it's Twitter or the news even now. And so I know you mentioned it'd be nice to have civics and ethics back in the mix, but I guess kind of how the exhaustion is also stemming from not knowing, like, people are really social, they like to know what other people are thinking about an issue sometimes, especially the less clear ones, not like the clearly you're racist ones. And so even religion, right? Some people like to do good because that's what they believe is going to help them in whatever they believe in their religion. So just kind of how it seems like it's more exhausting than ever because we're not really sure what's the right direction, because you can almost make an argument for both sides sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another problem besides driving nuance out of the conversation with pitchforks and torches. The other thing that Twitter does is it gives you a piece of information, and the top of your screen is a place where you can react to that information instantly. And again, I'm guilty of this. The instinct is to just go like, how dare that person do this? And then, like, if you do that every time, 1 second later, someone's like, it didn't really happen, the video's edited, you made a mistake, and then you have to go, sorry. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but the best thing that Twitter could do to improve itself, if Elon really wants to fix Twitter, the thing that he should do and would never do, because it would destroy the business model, is to put a 20-minute break on your ability to react to anything, right? You should, if you saw a video, and you know how now it says, and this was the election, the 2020 election that did this, like if you try to retweet an article, it says like, hey, do you want to read the article first? Everyone says no. No one reads the article. The way to fix it would be to force people to read the article, or to force people to get the context. And that's what's impossible. And so what's happening now is something is tweeted, everybody reacts, then people, it's the Mark Twain quote. Is it Mark Twain who said the lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth gets its shoes on? Is that Mark Twain? I don't know why I keep turning as if you know everything.
I do.
But that's the problem, is like the cat's out of the horse is out of the barn. By the time whatever the actual essence of truth of any piece of information on Twitter, before it's accessible in a wide way, it doesn't matter, the conversation's over, we've moved on. And so what he really should do is just make it illegal to tweet. They should go to jail with those goddamn biochem majors. It should be illegal to tweet until you have actually informed yourself. But the problem is the entire business model of the internet is no one learn anything. Stop learning everything, just react. Like that's how they function. I'm not even sure I'm answering your question.
Yeah, more or less. I was just talking about how the media is factoring into kind of confusing everyone's moral compass, and that's more exhausting. It's trying to figure out, wait, what do I think about this? And then having to act on it.
Yeah.
Right, because it's blurring the notion of truth. There's no truth. But on that note, I'm going to turn over to Professor Gillespie, who has the truth.
Huge fan of your work. Thank you so much for the stuff you create. A lot of good place for it. It's fantastic. I'll give you an easy one and a hard one. You can pick which one you want to answer. Great. And it's totally fine if you pick the easy one. The easy one has to do with just tell me anything and everything you can about the John Raphael character. Maybe arguably the greatest character ever created. The harder one is, you've talked a lot about, I haven't read the book, I've seen almost all the shows of everything you've done, but the idea of what's good, we know what's good, we know what's better, but that's not as obvious to me as maybe we might hope. So I'm just curious if you ever get to the idea of what's of authority, moral authority, sources of normativity, and so forth, what makes the good things good and how do you know?
Well, okay, I'll answer the harder one first and then the easier one. Okay, so moral authority, I have a problem with. Not like this kind of problem, but a problem of like, I don't know how I feel about it. The beginning of The Good Place, the first scene really of The Good Place is Eleanor saying to Michael, who was right? Who was right about all this? And he's like, well, the Jews were like 5% right, and the Muslims were 5% right, and the Catholics were 5%. Everyone's like 5% right. And the reason I did that is because I needed to send a message to people that this was not any religious conception of the afterlife, that whatever the organized religion's construct of good and bad, of right and wrong, we're not interested in that. What we're interested in is a philosophical investigation of the good or bad. And it ended up being an extremely, I guess, sort of humanistic view, where it was less of, there is a moral authority on the show, right? It's this impossible global interstellar calculator that just has a point total for your actions. But from the moment that I came up with that idea, I also knew that the end of the show would be revealing that system sucked and did not, oh, Carol! I knew this was gonna happen. Just get out of here. So that was, we asked that question a lot of like, are we ever going to see something up there, right? And the closest we came, don't worry, the closest we came was Maya Rudolph played a judge. She was not an authority, though. She was, like judges on Earth, was an interpreter of rules and stuff. She was not making decisions. In fact, her whole thing was, I have to stay out of this. And so we sidestepped the entire issue. And part of the reason we did that, and part of the reason the book is the way it is because I don't personally find the question that interesting, weirdly. I don't find the question of like, is there an authority that, is it existence precedes essence or vice versa? I don't particularly care, because I think that the way that I envision this getting better, this being everything, is this kind of incremental person-to-person, like humanistic improvement on just tiny daily actions. And that might be incredibly naive, but I think that the reason I like them is because we have them all the time. And the idea of like an authority who is in charge or watching us or judging us or anything else, I kind of think like, whatever, we'll learn that later if that exists. But for now, what's in front of me is I just dinged this guy's car, how do I deal with it? So it's a little bit of a cop-out, frankly. Like it's a sidestep, and we don't really answer the question or even ask the question of of what should replace this calculator, right? We just are arguing for more of an Aristotelian approach, more of a like trial and error approach.
The question of like, so whether God is the ultimate source of authority is one version of it, but just the idea, I mean, just way more practically and way more simply, like you and I talking, I love that sort of thing of like, yeah, it's just us talking. But how do you know you're not Aunt Connie?
Great question. I think because I think the Aunt Connies of the world generally know that they're Aunt Connies. Like I do. I don't think, there are some people, I have someone in my extended family who is an Aunt Connie, and she doesn't know she's an Aunt Connie. But she's also 86 years old and suffering from mental decline. And so I can't get that mad at her when we have interactions and conversations. I can get mad at someone. I can get mad at Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson knows exactly what he's doing. He knows why he's doing it, which is, right? And he doesn't not know that he's that. Of course he does. He chose to be that. And I think there are certain, I have sympathy, not empathy, but sympathy for the people who are getting sucked into that machine. But I don't have any sympathy for the people who know that they are that. And I also think that I think there are a group of people who are Aunt Connie and don't know it, certainly. And that's why it's worth talking to them, right? And that's why it's worth saying like, hey, here's another perspective. And the things that in the culture that give me the greatest hope always are the stories that you see sometimes of like a white supremacist who one day was like, wait a second, I'm the bad guy. And changed and got out and are now going around and lecturing other people and trying to help them. Like, so yes, your world can be turned upside down at any given moment if it's pointed out to you that you are in fact Aunt Connie. But I think that the majority of the people who are know they are, and I think they like being it and they're choosing to be it. And that doesn't mean they're not reachable or not worth talking to. But I don't know, maybe this is, maybe again, it's naive, but I feel like when you and I are talking, and if one of us is Aunt Connie, we will know that we're Aunt Connie. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. And then as far as John Ralphio goes, John Ralphio was a character on Parks and Recreation, if any of you have seen that show. He was an insane person. He was a lunatic played by Ben Schwartz, who I had a meeting with. That's Ben Schwartz in real life. Like Ben Schwartz is John Ralphio with different clothes, but his energy level is that he's at like 11 all the time. The best thing about him was that our costume designer is named Kirsten Mann, and she's excellent. And she showed me a picture of what she was going to dress him in the first time he was in the show, and it was outlandish and absurd. And then I said, okay, here's the deal. Because usually what happens is if there's a character's coming on a show, the costume designer will come and show you some photos. They'll do a fitting, they'll show you photos, which of these shirts do you like? And I said, okay, here's the deal. I never want to see what you dress him in until he steps on the stage. And I promise you that there is nothing you could ever put him in that will be wrong. And she was like, great. And so if you watch his appearances, you can watch a supercut of his appearances over the years. And by the end, he's wearing like enormous slippers with like panther heads on them, like crazy hats. And it delighted me every single time. And it was just, she just tried to match with clothes what his personality is like in real life, and that was the result.
Yes, 2 more questions. Yes, you're maybe, I can't decide. Yeah, you. And then
wait a second, you're not the roommate, are you? Oh, all right.
So I'm a theater major, so I
right.
take plenty of practical classes. I was just wondering if you could take us through your journey of being this wide-eyed, curious college student, English major, to where you are now, just all the way through, as much detail as you'd like to include, but.
It is a little bit in the book, yeah. You mean like academically, professionally?
Yeah.
So I majored in English, and I did a lot of theater. I used to be an actor. And one day I was in a play when I was a junior, and I was very frustrated myself because I had this thought. I had 2 thoughts very quickly back to back. First thought was, I know how this should sound coming out of my mouth, and I can't make it sound like that. And then the second thought was, oh, that means I'm a writer. Like, that's literally what a writer is, right? Like, you know how it should sound, you just can't do it yourself, so you need someone prettier, essentially, to say it than you. So I committed to writing. I moved to New York, gave myself a year to get a job. I was a very practical person, so I decided if I didn't get a job within a year, I would apply to grad school. I was going to go to grad school in English. Practical.
Very practical.
That was a vague plan. I didn't know, but that was a vague plan. And then I temped in some places in New York. I slept on my friends' couches, and I submitted a bunch of writing samples to a bunch of shows. Back then, this is 1997. It was like Letterman, Conan, SNL, bunch of places like that. I got interviewed at SNL in July of 97, right after I graduated. Didn't get hired. I was sent, we walked around the 30 Rock offices in pairs for producers to interview us, and I was paired up with this woman, and I have a very distinct memory of thinking, like, there's no way I'm getting this job because this woman is way funnier than I am. And it was Tina Fey, and I was right. And so she got hired and I didn't, but they were like, look, we like you, just try to stick around. So I was like, okay. And then that like in December, they fired a couple people, and in classic SNL fashion, they called me on a Friday and said, you start Monday. So I started at SNL in January of '98, was extremely bad at the job. A thing I write about in this book, I was very bad. I did not know what I was doing. I was in hopelessly over my head. I was unhappy because I was unhappy, and then I was also unaware that I was unhappy because it didn't seem possible that I could be 22 years old and writing for Saturday Night Live and not happy, and so I just shoved the unhappiness down deep into my stomach, and then I started going to therapy and understood that I wasn't happy, and as soon as I understood that I wasn't happy, I got a lot happier and I started getting better at the job. And then I stayed there for 6 years, left in '04 because my girlfriend had moved to LA, and if we were going to make it work, I had to move. So I did. I got a single job offer, which was at the office, and which everyone knew factually was a bad idea to adapt the British office into American version. But the guy running it was named Greg Daniels, who is a genius, and I met with him for like 3 hours and thought like, well, this guy's amazing. He will be my guru and he'll teach me how to write. And he did, and the show, against all odds, succeeded, and then he and I created Parks and Rec together, and then my friend Dan, who I hired on Parks and Rec, he and I did Brooklyn together, and then a bunch of the people that I worked with and I have done other things since. And it's like the reason I walk through this in granular detail is because there's a part of the book that talks about luck, and luck, I think, is the most undervalued, the single most ignored and undervalued aspect of all of our lives. There's a sociologist named Robert Frank who teaches at Cornell who wrote a book about luck, which is great. It's called Success and Luck and the Myth of Meritocracy. I always get that wrong. And he writes about luck and why people don't recognize luck when it occurs, when it affects them. And I think about nothing in my life except luck. It's the only thing that I think about when I think about the sequence of events starting before I was born that lined up in order for me to be sitting here right now talking to you. And I think that the more that you consider your life to be a combination of hard work and decisions and also random good or bad fortune, the more kind of centered you can be about where you are and how you exist in the world. So that's my story. Luck. The answer is luck.
Oh, sorry, because we're gonna mix and mingle. I did promise and I keep my word. Yes, you. Last question. Go for it.
Sorry about that. I'll try to make it quick. So I am an alum. I graduated back in 2005 with a degree in philosophy from here.
Okay.
And my question is really about participation in a problematic system. And, after I graduated, I went to law school to become a public defender. I've been a public defender for 12 years. And the criminal justice system, as I'm sure college students know more than a lot of people, that it's really messed up, And one of the things I struggle with a lot is it better for me to try to do the best I can within that system every day with individual clients and fail a lot and just see the system very close up and how bad it can be? Or is it better to remove myself and try to affect change or do good in some other way? And I think this doesn't just apply to the criminal justice system, obviously, but the question really is, should you try to change something that's pretty problematic and bad from within, or is it better to kind of remove yourself from it and do what you can separately?
This is an enormous question, in part because every system stinks, right? Every one of the whether you're talking about a law firm or the criminal justice system or a sports franchise, like they all are problematic. There's no non-problematic career choice you can make. The criminal justice system's number one probably on the list in this country, right? Or it's top three. My dad did ROTC to get through college, and he was in college from 1965 to 1969. So if any of you have studied American history, you'll know that those were dicey years to be in the Navy. And he would walk to class every day in like dress whites and would get shouted at and screamed at and by protesters. And in 1968, he also went to Harvard. In 1968, the students stormed University Hall and like occupied it, and he was still every day waking up and putting on his dress whites and walking to his classes. And people made certain assumptions about him because of his uniform, and he was yelled at and screamed at. My dad is a socialist, an actual socialist. Like, he thinks Bernie is too far to the right. And he also is a pacifist and deeply believes that the American war machine should be completely dismantled. And his argument back to the people who protested him was, you should be thrilled that I am in the Navy, I'm going to the Navy, because I don't want the Navy to do anything. I want them to stop being in the Navy. I want to stop the Navy. We want to single-handedly end the Navy. And if you don't have pacifist socialists in the US Armed Forces, then what you get is something that looks like our current Air Force, for example, which is a large number of people in a bunker in Colorado Springs killing people with robots that they're controlling with joysticks, and having then enormous mental health problems and emotional health problems because we've created a system in which there's no connection, there's no like intellectual, emotional, or any other kind of connection between the actions of the people in the military and the harm and destruction that they are causing. And I think my dad is a weirdo, to be clear. Like, I'm not saying that my dad's way is the good way, but I have often thought about that when situations come up like yours, because obviously I don't know the answer. I don't know which is better. Not having been a public defender, I don't know the degree to which it's screwed up. I can, I think, picture it, but I don't know the degree to which change is possible from inside a system like that, or the degree to which it's possible from without. So I don't know. I will say though, that if I'm about to say something insane, okay? So, Twitter. Let's compare Twitter to the criminal justice system. My wife thinks I should leave Twitter. And she has noticed what everyone has noticed, which is all the stuff we've been talking about the way that arguments play out, about the impossibility of any kind of intelligent discourse, all that stuff. And what she has noticed is like some Republican, usually, not always, but usually, will do or say something that I take offense to, and I will quote tweet it or react to it or make a joke about it. And she says, like, this is futile. Like, they say this stuff to get you to react. Then you react. Then they point to you and say, ha ha, triggered. Then you point to them and say, no, you're racist. And it just goes on and on and on. And my feeling is, yeah, it's terrible. That's terrible. I feel how deeply unproductive this all is. But if I leave, and everyone who's shouting back at them leaves, then we've just ceded this public square of sorts to only one side of the situation. And sometimes the best you can do is to just scream back. And I know that's not great and it's not super productive, but I also I flinch a little at the idea that the answer is always to remove yourself. And I don't know if that applies to you and your public defender work in the criminal justice system. It might not. It might be that the system is so calcified and screwed up that your participation in it is causing you enough anguish and pain and suffering. And also, the most effective you can be within that system doesn't nearly make up for it, in which case you should probably remove yourself. But if there is some angle you can find on the work that you clearly love and that you believed in as far back as the years 2001 to 2005 here at UCLA, then maybe it's a Sisyphean rock that you roll up the hill knowing it's going to roll back down, and you find some worth or value in the stick-to-itiveness and the dedication. I don't know. I mean, that's a very tough question to ask, and I think it's almost like you just got to check in with yourself every couple weeks and say, like, what's the ceiling for how much good I can do here? What's the floor? What's the ceiling for how much good I can do somewhere else? What's the floor? What's the opportunity cost of giving up a career I know how to do for one that I don't? I mean that there's a million calculations there, and I don't know how, I couldn't possibly imagine how they would all kind of play out. But I guess the ultimate point is I think that as frustrating as some of this stuff is sometimes, whether it's yelling at people on Twitter or being a public defender, I don't think that the answer is always simply remove yourself, because I think that if everyone who has the right intentions removes themselves from difficult situations, then those situations are doomed.